you're here today because I've got some exciting things to share with you about evaluation tips and techniques. We've all entered into a new normal with COVID-19. And with that comes the opportunity for us to expand our presentation skills as Toastmasters. And certainly doing that virtually will cause reason for expansion as well. So now I'm going to share my screen. And Michelle, is that something that you need to give me permission to do?
What's that?
Toastmaster Kim, you should have permission.
Okay, perfect. Hang on just a second here. And I will bring that up. Here we go. All right, awesome. All right, Michelle, please confirm you can see the screen.
Yes, we see it very well.
Perfect, thank you very much. So as Michelle mentioned, I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. It took me a while to get there between all the things I was doing professionally, but I did join Toastmasters in 2009 after being a professional public speaker. Now you may wonder, why would I join Toastmasters after being paid to speak professionally for many years? And my reason for doing that was simple. I needed to get better at my timing. I needed to be able to get my point across in as few words as possible, but still make sure that I engage with my audience. I've been very excited to be part of Pathways over the last year and a half, and I'm currently working on level 5 of my presentation mastery path. We're going to start off to kind of gauge how you're doing, and I'd like to use some of the annotation tools in Zoom. So what I'm going to do in just a moment is I'm going to turn on your annotation tool, and I'd like you to use your stamp tool to give me an idea of what your comfort level is with doing a virtual evaluation. Is it something that still feels awkward and uneasy and you're uncomfortable with it? Or are you loving this new normal? So give me just a second. I'm going to turn on the stamp tool. And with the stamp tool, you will see at the top of your screen in just a second. Here we go. I've got 3 screens going, so it gives me just a second of a delay. All right, let me stop the screen share real quick to get my stamp tool going here. Hang on. All right. I'm having a little bit of an issue with this, so let's put it in chat. Send me a chat and let me know if you're enjoying virtual evaluations, yes, or give me a no if you're a bit challenged by that. So it looks like we've got quite a few people that are enjoying those virtual evaluations. And it is a little different. I think we're starting to realize that it's certainly different to give a virtual presentation with all the clicks and all the screens that you have to pay attention to, but it can be a little bit of a challenge. I know I've got some people that are kind of in the middle and still figuring it out. With this presentation, my intention is that by the end of the presentation, you're going to feel a little more comfortable delivering the virtual evaluations, and you're going to know about some other tools that are available to you online that you may or may not have been taking advantage of that are in Pathways. Our agenda for this morning, we're going to start off and really talk about what is the evaluation criteria that's out there today and how can we leverage that to be master evaluators. And then how do you deliver that quality feedback? What does that look like in the Toastmasters world? Certainly we want to pay attention to some of the pitfalls, and I'm sure you guys have seen some of those along the way, so we'll talk about that. And then finally, the best way for us to become master evaluators is to actually practice those skills. So let's get started with the first one, leveraging the evaluation criteria. Now I'm going to start, because it's contest season, with the evaluation contest judging criteria. And if you really want to become a better evaluator, I would suggest that you pay attention to what is in the evaluation criteria for the contest, whether or not you compete. Although I'd give you a little hint, competing in an evaluation contest is a lot easier than preparing a speech in advance. The 4 criteria that judges really pay attention to have to do with the analytical quality, the recommendations, the techniques that you use as an evaluator, and then how you summarize at the end. So let's go a little bit deeper with each of those. On the back of that judge's ballot, there's details about what each of these means. So when we start with analytical quality, as an evaluator, really paying attention to what were the most meaningful strengths and weaknesses, not just some of the basics necessarily, but what was really the most meaningful in that speech. And then evaluator comments, are they clear and logical? Is it easy to follow what you're talking about? And then finally, identifying the strengths and weaknesses. We know in a 2 to 3 minute evaluation, there's not enough time to give every single strength and weakness that may be part of that speech. But your job is to analyze that and pull out the best of the best. Secondly, you want to pay attention to the recommendations. Are they specific recommendations for improvement? Anyone can point out a flaw or something that needs to be improved, but can you be specific so that the speaker can learn and grow from that? Is it practical and helpful? And certainly it needs to be positive and encouraging, so again, the speaker can learn and grow. And then finally, we want to encourage them to improve in their next presentation. What's your technique as an evaluator? This is how your comments and recommendations are presented. I like to call this the art of evaluation. Certainly the first two categories, analytical quality and recommendations, that's more of the science, but this is truly the art. How do you say it in a way that is easily digestible for not only the speaker, but also the audience? Are you sensitive to the feelings and the needs of the speaker? Because again, we want to lift them up and encourage and inspire them to speak again. This last piece, summation, is something that many people miss, and it really becomes something that the judges look for in addition to the other three. And that is, what is the summation? You as the evaluator, how do you conclude your evaluation? You should have a brief summary of your comments that you've had throughout the 2 to 3 minutes, as well as your suggestions for improving. And again, make sure that your comments are positive and encouraging. Now that's the judge's criteria. When we're doing our evaluations in the normal club meetings, we also have evaluation forms. Toastmasters calls these evaluation forms, evaluation resources. I'll go back and forth and use those terms interchangeably as well. For every single path, it seems that the very first presentation after the icebreaker is do a speech, get evaluated, redo that speech, get evaluated again so that you can incorporate some of that feedback. Now this evaluation form is specific to whatever speech project the person is working on, and you do want to take a look at the purpose statements and the notes for the evaluator. At the bottom of that first page of the evaluation form, you've got a place to fill in your overall comments about where you think the speaker excelled and what you may want them to work on and how they can actually challenge themselves. You also have the opportunity on the next page to rate the speaker on a scale of 5 to 1. 5 being exemplary, 1 being, you got some room for improvement, you just started out on this path and that's okay, that's what we're all here for. This is new with Pathways. We never had this before. We didn't have the real rating of a 5 to 1 scale. Now this is personal between you and the speaker. You're not going to share, I rated you a 4 in clarity and here's why. You're simply going to do the ratings, but in the verbal evaluation, share the comments. I really like the last page of the evaluation form because it gives you the clear groups of categories that we need to pay attention to, as well as what does a 5 look like? What does a 3 look like? And that's how we start to have a common language as Toastmasters to make sure that we all are on the same page in how we improve our presentations. Now, the evaluation scoring. You notice on the forms, the evaluation forms, it says some things about how that works. And I want to talk a little bit about the ratings of 1 and 2. Most people, when they join Toastmasters, are there to improve their skills. And in improving their skills, they may have much room for improvement. I would encourage you not to be afraid to use a 1 or 2. Again, that's a rating between you and the speaker. because you want to make sure that they are growing and that they understand where they need to go. If you're always rating a person a 3, 4, or 5, then those are going to be a little less of an area that the speaker may work on as well. Someone had a comment, which I want to mention, clarity of spoken language. There are people who speak English as a second language, or they're rebuilding their vocabulary and speech flow after a brain injury. And certainly consideration should be made for that. I think that's an excellent point. A lot of times that's why people join Toastmasters. They want to get that extra practice. What I would recommend is getting with the speaker prior to their speech and saying, are there any particular areas you want me to pay attention to in addition to the normal criteria? And they may tell you that. And some of these things may be private one-on-one, and some of it's going to be in the public evaluation. So think about those things. So thanks for bringing that up. Now, where do you find additional help for the evaluation? If you haven't taken the evaluation e-learning course, I would highly recommend that you check that out. That's something new that we have available to us on Pathways. If you log into Toastmasters and go to your Pathways base camp, this is what your dashboard looks like. Toward the bottom, there's something that says paths. So that's where you usually will go in and go into your path. But there's also something that popped up there that I had never seen, which is the how to evaluate. So I'm a clicker. I had to click on it and see what it's all about. That last slide that I showed you, evaluation scoring, I took a screenshot of that right out of that evaluation e-learning course. So I'd encourage you to take that, and here's why. The e-learning course actually gives you the opportunity to watch its parts of a speech and then evaluate it, and then you get to compare your 1 through 5 rating with the evaluator that's in the e-learning course to see where you stack up. So send me a chat and let me know if you have actually taken the e-learning course.
You did?
I think I've got some folks that, hey, I think I've got some folks that aren't on mute. So if you could check and make sure you're on mute, please. Thank you. All right, so it looks like we've got some people that didn't know about it, and it's something that you can do, and some of you have taken it. What I noticed when I took the course is that I was rating people, I was a little bit too generous with the speaker. She had some real challenges. She was brand new, and they were doing that to make it something that we could pay attention to, and I didn't know about it either until I stumbled across it. You can go back and take it as many times as you want. It takes about 30 minutes, which is a good investment of your time. So please take a chance, take a moment to go in and take the e-learning course. Here are the objectives of the course. They're going to review each section of the evaluation resource in much more detail than I did this morning. Then you get the opportunity to go hands-on and practice evaluating a speech. You literally will fill it out, fill out the form, and then you'll compare your scores with the online instructor to see how you did. And to me, that's the best way you can learn. So something I'd love for you to take a chance to do. The next thing that I noticed on my Pathways Base Camp was that I had a speech evaluations menu option where you can go in and you can access any speech resource if you know the name of it. Now, I didn't realize they were all there, but if you're ever looking for a particular evaluation form or evaluation resource, take a moment to go into your Pathways, speech evaluations, and then you will see a list of all of the different evaluation resources. Send me a yes or no. Did you know that that was there? I think that Toastmasters International is adding things all the time, and it's very important to go into Toastmasters, go to your base camp, take a look at everything so that you can see what are the new tools that are available to us. And I don't know when they added that, but I don't think it's been that long ago. Another way that you can get to the evaluation form is perhaps it's in your club. We use, Dairy Newsmakers uses free Toast Host, many of the clubs do, and there's a way for your webmaster within your club, once the speaker signs up and they select their path and their project, then the evaluation form is there, and all you have to do with it is click on it, and you have your evaluation form. With the virtual evaluations, what's so great about that is you're not doing the who's on first, did you bring my evaluation, I brought one, whatever. You're sitting right in front of your computer, so it's easy to access it. And again, you have a couple of different ways to do that. Now, some virtual tips and techniques that I want to mention for evaluators. Download the speaker's evaluation form or resource. We just talked about a couple of different ways that you could do that. Do that in advance, and then make sure you check in with the speaker, maybe the day before, even a week before. Once you know you're evaluating the person, shoot them an email. What are you working on? What can I help you? The next thing is I want to make sure that I give my speaker my completed evaluation form as soon as I can. My goal is before I leave my computer at the end of my meeting on Monday night, if I've been an evaluator, I'm going to send that via email to my speaker before I get up and go eat dinner. And that way, you know it's done. Worst case scenario, at least do it within 24 hours. Speakers, you can own this. You can take the driver's seat, touch base with your evaluator before the meeting. Let them know if there's anything that you're working on. If English is a second language or you tend to go too fast, those are things that you can do as well. Have your evaluator pay attention to that. Upload your completed evaluation form to Pathways. You can do that as well. Also, Andrew Byrne pointed out that Kip Barkley is having a workshop on September 8th for free Toast. So if you want to take your website to the next level, you can do that as well.
Workshop on evaluation.
Okay, so that's leveraging your evaluation criteria. Again, think about what judges are looking for, because that's what good looks like, and a winner. And then the other point I wanted to make, since we are in contest season, something that's really fun to do is print off a copy of the judge's ballot. If you're not participating, which I would encourage you to participate as a contestant, but if you're not, attend and pretend you're a judge if you're not actually a judge, and score each speaker, and then see if you come in first, second, third place with the speakers and you align with the judges. That's also a great way to learn and to grow as an evaluator. In addition to leveraging the evaluation criteria, the next thing you want to do is make sure you're delivering quality feedback. And here are a few tips for how to do that. One of my favorite quotes is, "Feedback is the breakfast of champions." Some of you know who Ken Blanchard is. He wrote The 1 Minute Manager and many, many other books. I had the pleasure of meeting him years ago at a conference. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. We join Toastmasters to grow as speakers, and we can't grow unless we do get feedback. So what that does is when we get good feedback, it raises our self-esteem. Self-esteem fuels personal growth. That feedback reinforces the personal growth. And then our personal growth is nourished through self-esteem, and more self-esteem generates growth. And it's just a great, wonderful circle. So how do we as evaluators lift someone up while also providing them with, I hate the term constructive feedback, I think it's horrible. I say provide them with recommendations or feedback. Feedback doesn't always have to be negative. It doesn't always have to be positive. How can we provide them with some balanced feedback? How you say it is so important. And the other reason for going to a speech contest and watching the evaluators compete, I did this one time when I was in Atlanta, and I literally took notes on how they said it. What were some of the phrases that they used that I really liked? And I made a list of those. And then I grouped them into, okay, well, what were some of the things they said in their opening? And what were some of the things they said when they were talking about strengths? And what were some of the things they said when they were sharing their recommendations? Michelle said she likes to call it points or points of suggestions, recommendations, a technique, something you might want to consider. And those are things that we have to really take a look at. It's not that you're sugarcoating it. You're still giving them the information, but we want it to land where the speaker will actually hear it. And if we say it in ways like you should have or you failed to, then your speaker starts to get a little defensive, even though they're trying to be open to that feedback. Feedback can be tough sometimes. So we want to do the best we can to personalize it. Here's the thing. When you are doing an evaluation, it's your opinion. It's not the whole club's, because the whole club isn't speaking. So you want to, if you notice on the say it like this side, there's a lot of I statements. And those things make it more personal to you and also personal to the speaker. In the chat, send me a chat. What do you do to nourish self-esteem when you evaluate? For example, Michelle says points of suggestion. What else could you do? What phrases do you use? How do you nourish self-esteem in your speaker? Absolutely, Linda. Point out well.
Could you just say in video?
Start with the strengths, provide encouragement.
Somehow you muted yourself.
Hello, Kim. You muted yourself.
Hey, sorry about that. I think Michelle muted everybody and then it got me at the same time. So we're good. All right, so back to chat. What else have you got? Let's look at some other ideas here on how you can make sure that you're nourishing that self-esteem. So consider what I said about attending those evaluation contests, not only to see how they do and figure out your judging criteria, but also listen to how they're delivering that information, which is also very important. Some other tips and techniques to consider. Make eye contact with the camera. That's definitely a virtual tip, and it's definitely something you have to get used to. I have worked on that. I've actually added a second webcam so that it's not on my laptop, it's on one of my external monitors. Because again, you're trying to make eye contact with the person on the other end. If we're constantly looking down at the screen and we're trying to see the faces, or I'm looking at my other screen, I'm losing some of that connection with the virtual audience. Audio is more important than video. And anytime you can get the actual audio phone call in for a Zoom number, my recommendation would be use your phone to call in, and then instead of using your audio on your computer, and here's why. If something were to happen with your internet connection and you're doing it all on Zoom through your laptop, that'll go out. Our phones are a lot more reliable than our internet. So even if my video gets a little choppy, you could still hear me on the audio. So that's something you might want to do with your clubs as well. Consider your video and your lighting quality. As an evaluator, you want to make sure that you have the most recent version of Zoom, which has some additional features to enhance the lighting. And then that's feedback you want to give to the speaker as well. How is their lighting and audio and video quality? Watch for the audience reactions. That is a wonderful thing that you have the opportunity to do with these virtual evaluations, because you can see the faces of the other people. So when you're giving your evaluation, you can say, I noticed that the people were very engaged when you got to this section. All right, there's a question about how to get the most recent version of Zoom. Very simple, just go to zoom.us and then scroll down to the very bottom and it'll say Zoom Client. It's very confusing. Zoom Client is the desktop version of Zoom. So that's what you want to download, and they update it all the time and it's free, that you will be able to get the most recent version, which has the lighting enhancements. What other tips do you have for, before we move to this next one, what other tips do you have for virtual? Okay, Ernesto is saying some speakers begin by asking the membership to applaud the speaker for actually having risen to the lectern to speak. We can certainly do that virtually as well. I think that's one of the things that many of us miss with these virtual meetings is the clapping. And we can do that. We can do that and take our microphones off mute. I want to say cameras. Do I recommend standing? It depends. I'm a professional speaker, so when I'm doing a 90-minute webinar, I'm not standing. I'm sitting here at my desk. So that's what I want to practice. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you are trying to get better at being in front of an audience and you want to stand up, or you feel like you have more energy when you're standing versus sitting, I've really worked on that to make sure I can keep my energy level up while I'm sitting, then you want to do that as well. So I've got, hey Kim, number 1 and 4, any more details on how to do both? Make eye contact with the camera and watch for audience reactions. The way that you can do that, and it's one of the things that I would say, making eye contact with the camera, try to get the camera as close to your eye level as possible and just practice staring at it instead of the screen. As far as watching the audience reaction, you may want to minimize and then drag the audience gallery over, but if you're sharing your screen, you can't necessarily do that. So from time to time, you want to take a look at your audience. But if I'm the evaluator, then for me, I can watch the audience reaction for my speaker, and I can give my speaker some feedback on that audience reaction. Careful with virtual backgrounds. I can tell you I have had a nightmare situation with virtual backgrounds. I bought a green screen, I bought everything that you can think of, and I've sent most of it back via Amazon. I can't seem to get it to work because my HD camera is so wide and the green screen has to be so big. So I started off with a blank wall when COVID happened. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I want all these things behind me. I put all these things behind me, and then I wanted to do green screen. The best way to do a green screen is to get into a small room, do a green screen like a curtain, almost in a semicircle. Right? We have one of the members in our Toastmasters club, Connie Finkelman, she's got it set up and it works beautifully. So if you don't have the green screen working just right so that it is covering all aspects, then you start to see some fade and you start to see some in and out. So for me, I've decided the best thing I can do is make sure that I just use my regular background. If you don't know what a green screen is, it's literally like a green piece of fabric. It's a green shower curtain. It's a green St. Patrick's Day tablecloth. There's a lot of different things that can become a green screen. Now, some other tips and techniques, the last two that are mentioned there, give additional feedback in pathways and award a badge in pathways. We talked about this last week in our club meeting. And how do you do this? Share your feedback. So the best way to do this is log into pathways, enter the member's name in the search bar. So I've got Connie up here. So I'm just logged into my pathways. I've got it going. If Connie is in 2 clubs and she has Delray Newsmaker set as her primary club, I will actually see Connie pop up. So if someone's in a club and they don't pop up, it's probably because they have another club set as their home club. So it has to be someone that's in your club. Then you're going to click on the member's name. Notice it's highlighted. And from there, on the menu bar, you're going to click on feedback. Notice how I have that gray. That means I've clicked on it. And then I'm going to type my feedback and decide who's going to see it. So notice that my feedback says, Connie, thanks for inspiring us to be more creative with our virtual presentations. Your background movies that flow with your speech are outstanding. So this is what you can find if you're in the Toastmasters base camp. You can actually, at the top of the screen, you'll see a little search bar, and then that's where you'll type in the name, double click on the person's name, it'll take you here. That's where you want to click on feedback, and then you can type in the feedback and decide who you want to see it. Do you want everyone in your club to see it, or you just want Connie to see it? Now, while you're there, you can also award a badge, and I love awarding the badge in addition to the feedback. If you notice over here at the bottom of the screen, right above post, there's a little badge icon. click on the badge icon before you hit post after you've made your comments. And then you can say, what's Connie doing? And give her a little badge. Well, Connie's being super innovative, so I want to give her that badge. And it sends it to Connie. Since we're doing our meetings virtually, award badges to some of your members. Maybe it was their first time being general evaluator. You know, they were collaborative, they were exceptional at it, or they were courageous because it was their first time. So you can award a badge for anything, and I certainly would consider awarding badges as a part of the comments that I give for the evaluations. Now, you're not required to do this, but it's another way to engage. Give feedback and award a badge at the end of your next Toastmasters meeting to at least one member. Whether you're an evaluator or not, get in the habit of giving that feedback and awarding badges. I'll tell you, it feels pretty good. Anyone can award a badge to anyone else. So just like I went in the other day and I awarded Connie a badge, I wasn't her evaluator. I just said, you know what, Connie does such a cool job. I just want to give her a shout out. It's a great way to build self-esteem, a wonderful way to acknowledge someone. And then in their pathways, all that feedback is there on the screen and they can see that at any time. So consider awarding badges to your fellow members and sending feedback to your fellow members. You don't have to be an evaluator to do that. We've talked about how to leverage the evaluation criteria to deliver the quality feedback. Now let's go into some of the potential pitfalls. And I know I've got a lot of experienced Toastmasters out there and quite a few DTMs that have seen some of the pitfalls over the years. I have come up with 3 major ones that I've noticed, and I want to get your input on what you think these are. One I call the sugar-coated evaluation. The next one I call the play-by-play. And then the third one I call the long-winded evaluation. So send me a chat. What would you say some of the characteristics and pitfalls are of the sugar-coated evaluation? All positives, no recommendations. Absolutely, Austin. Too many positive comments, over-enthusiasm. Enthusiasm doesn't give honest improvements. Everything was wonderful. There's no way to go from here. Everything's great. Or maybe they're uncomfortable and they don't want to be honest. The speaker, you're absolutely right, Belinda, the speaker learns very little from a sugar-coated evaluation. And people are there to improve, and we're doing them a disservice if we don't give them balanced feedback. Sometimes we're uncomfortable and we just don't know how to say it, but that's one of the great things about being an evaluator is it gives you the opportunity to get better at how to deliver that type of feedback. So you want to make sure that you're not delivering that sugar-coated evaluation. And how do you do that? You balance your feedback, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. What about the play-by-play characteristics and pitfalls? Have you ever seen one of those? What does that look like? Oh yeah, recapping the same speech. Guess what? We all heard it too. And when that happens, it's like the evaluator just doesn't know what to say. I mean, it's one thing to dissect the speech and say in your opening and then go into detail. It's another to say you opened with, your 3 points were, we were there, we got all that. So you've got to really focus, and that's where in that judge's criteria, where the criteria said the analytical piece of it, it's not about a play-by-play blow. It's about analyzing what were the best parts of the speech and what were some places that could be improved. When you're doing the play-by-play, it doesn't give the speaker what they need to identify their strengths and identify the recommendations or area for improvement. So you want to make sure that you are not just doing a play-by-play. And if you catch yourself doing it, catch yourself and then shift gears and go into what does that mean? Why is that? Why am I pointing out something in the body of the speech? There has to be a reason for that. And you're right, it's repetitive. It's not really an evaluation. Here's a question. What is recommended for a new Toastmaster member before beginning evaluating other members? I think they need to do at least 3 speeches is what Toastmasters recommends. And they may even want to meet with their mentor. I would certainly recommend that they do the e-course, the e-learning course that I pointed out earlier. That's a great way for a new member to get a better idea of what's going on. So that's your play-by-play pitfall. And then the final one, and unfortunately I have been guilty of this on a couple of occasions, the long-winded evaluation. We all know long-winded evaluations are not effective, but what are the pitfalls? Why would that be a problem? Isn't feedback, more feedback better? Too much information. We get started, we get excited, we give too many details, and then what does that do to the speaker? They don't know where to focus. Or you overwhelm the speaker and they no longer hear you. Or you keep going and you shut them down, which is the worst. Our job as evaluators is to analyze and pick out the best of the best, a couple of recommendations for how it can be improved for next time, and then we move on. That's why it's 2 to 3 minutes and not 5 to 7. And if you ever go over on your evaluation and you sit down and you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did a 4-minute evaluation, probably about 60 seconds worth of that was stuff that didn't need to be said anyway. As an evaluator, we've got to know the timing, and we've also got to know what are the key points. Now, I mentioned this earlier. There are going to be things that you write in your notes that you don't say out loud to the speaker, but you have written down. I'm not saying sugarcoat it, but maybe you noticed 5 or 6 things that they could do to improve. Pick the top 2 things that they could do to improve, and then put the others in there, and then they can take a look at that on their own, ask you any questions that they may have as well. Your time. Timing is very important. So you want to have your timer pinned so that you can see your timer. And the way that you do that is you just have those 3 little dots at the top of the person. That's timer. Our timer today has it says timer and then his name, so that makes it easier. And then you can pin his or her video to your screen so that you don't lose it. The other thing that you can do is, and this is another virtual type thing, is if you've downloaded the Toastmasters app, it has a timing feature in it. I've been playing around with it. I was going to show you a whole bunch of stuff about the app, but they've got some major kinks going on with it right now. But with the Toastmasters app, there's a timing feature if you log in as a guest, not as a member, and it will turn green, yellow, and red, and just set your phone right here in front of you so that you can see it and you're aware of what's going on. It's a little different when we're doing this virtually versus having the speaking lights in front of us. So how do you pin someone? You see the 3 little dots at the top of this person's name. If you go, you just have to hover in the upper right-hand corner of a person's name, click on the 3 dots, and then it'll say pin video. And then you can choose it again and unpin the video. And so that's how you would do that. It's just that simple. And again, that's why doing these meetings virtually is so great. We're all learning how to use the virtual technology much better. Effective evaluations. We've talked about 3 pitfalls. What makes for an effective evaluation is that it's a speech. It's a mini speech. But let me tell you this, and this is coming from my heart, so I hope you can hear this. This evaluation is not about you. It's not about you grandstanding and showing what a great speaker you are, because if that's how you evaluate, you're making it all about you. This evaluation should come from your heart and share with the speaker what you see as their strengths, a couple of recommendations for how they can improve, and then summarize it at the end. What does that look like? The opening of your evaluation. You want to think about, did they meet the speech objective? And you want to mention that. Did they connect with the audience? And you, as an evaluator, want to connect with the audience. Did the speaker hook the audience or get them interested? And was it logical and organized and have a clear message? So think about all those things as you're making your opening statements. In the body of your evaluation, here's something real simple. People call it the Oreo technique, the sandwich technique, call it what you want, okay? But I look at it like this. I look at two things that they did really well and why that was effective. Okay, so if you think about criteria that's on page 3 of the evaluation, if it's gestures, one of the things you did very well is you had excellent gestures. During the section of your speech where you talked about being on the phone, you took the phone and held it up to your ear. You set the scene. That's why that was effective. That would be an example. 2 examples of what could be improved and how. An example there would be vocal variety. So again, I'm going big and then I'm explaining where. Your vocal variety could be improved, or a recommendation I have for vocal variety is when you got to the part where your daughter was talking, I recommend changing the voice. Sound like your daughter sounds. Make it a little more interesting with the vocal variety. And then you can give the example, and that's even better when you can act it out yourself. And then you want to close with that, what did they do just overall that was exceptional? So save the best for last. So 2 things that went really well, 2 things that could be improved and how, and then what was exceptional and why it was effective. Now that is the body, and then in the closing, review and summary of all your points. So just a quick recap of what you said went really well, 2 areas for improvement, your overall impression of the speech. Did it inspire you? Was it memorable? Did they give a call to action and you're going to take it as a matter of fact and take the challenge? And then final words of encouragement. And there are so many better closing phrases than, I can't wait to hear your next speech. That to me is a cop-out. That basically is saying, I have no idea how to close this up, so I'm just going to say, and I can't wait for your next speech. So there's a lot of different ways that you can close out. And again, I did a little list. I have a list of all these different things I could say. You're an accomplished speaker who inspires others to take action. As you continue to hone your speaking skills, consider working on whatever. Your overall strength as a speaker. You're on your way to becoming a first-class speaker. Those are the things that you can close versus saying, can't wait to hear your next speech. The last part of this that's very important is not only do we want to make sure we understand and leverage the criteria, we deliver good feedback, we avoid some of those pitfalls, but you got to practice. We were not born being excellent evaluators. And how do you do that? Ask for feedback on your evaluations. If there's another Toastmaster in your group that you think is really good at evaluating, pull them aside and say, hey, I'm evaluating Bob tomorrow. Can you watch me and give me some information about that, about how you think I did? I'm very interested in that. Select 2 or 3 skills that you want to improve. Maybe it's in how you open your evaluation. Maybe it's in how you close. Maybe it's just the overall layout. And yeah, a general evaluator will give some overall feedback on that, but if you want to go deep, I would recommend pulling someone aside and going one-on-one and saying, hey, I want to make sure I'm not sugarcoating, and sometimes I feel like I am, so give me your personal opinion. And because maybe the general evaluator is fairly new and they're not someone that you want, giving you a ton of feedback on your evaluation, and you'd like to get someone else to do it as well. The third thing that you can do is complete that Pathways e-learning course, How to Evaluate. Many of you said you didn't even know it existed, so you want to make sure that you are familiar with it and you take it at least once or twice. I've taken it twice now myself. And then finally, you want to sign up to evaluate once a month, because you know what? Practice, practice, practice is what's going to make us better at what we do. If you evaluate and then it's another 3 months before you do it again, you're rusty. The great thing about all these virtual meetings is you can attend other clubs, and sometimes they're struggling to have enough people in position. And so they may have an opportunity for you to be an evaluator or a general evaluator. Those are things that you can do as well. I got a question here. What advice do you have when there's a general evaluator and an assist? Do you recommend 2 evaluations for 1 speech? No, not a public evaluation unless it's an advanced club. I think that we have one person that stands up and gives the evaluation to the speaker, and everyone else can send their notes through chat. But then the general evaluator's role is not to evaluate that speech. The general evaluator's role is to evaluate the overall club meeting and how the evaluators did. So they're not evaluating the speaker at all. That's already been done. So we don't want to double do that unless you're in a club that's what you do. And that's typically in an advanced club, because that's too much, especially for a new member. You got to have a pretty thick skin to have a lot of those people coming at you with their opinions on evaluations. So send me a chat. What will you do to improve your evaluation skills as we wrap up and move into the question and answer? What can you do? I love it. Practice. Practice and take that course. Pay more attention. Conclude in a unique way. Challenge yourself to do that. And then do it more often.